another episode of AHBS, and we all know what AH stands for, and we all know what BS stands for too. And we'll give you some of both tonight. My name is Rick Neville, and I will be your host tonight. I also write a column for the Austin-Healey Mark called Auction Report, and regularly comment on Bring a Trailer under the name of Healey Rick. And the idea behind this particular session tonight is that Reid has asked me to do for our next Healey Mark column, a column on what people see as auction results, and when they get all excited and go, I can get $100,000 for my BT7, and then the difference of what they're actually going to get at when the dust all settles. And in order for me to do this column, because I'm inherently lazy, I said I could do a couple of experts like Andy and John, and they can give me all the information I need, and I can take it off the recording later and save myself a whole lot of trouble. So that's why we have two eminent guests tonight, and they are Andy Reid and John Saccameno. And before we get too far in, I want you to all know that this will be recorded and will be put up on the Austin-Healey Club of the YouTube channel. I would ask you to all to make sure that you mute your recording. That way, when you mute your microphones, we won't have people popping up and coughing and listening to somebody yell at them, or the dog barking, or reruns of Star Trek. So please make sure your mics are muted. Second of all, as I said before, this episode is brought to you, as all AHBS episodes, by the Austin-Healey Club of New England. And now that it is dues time, you're getting reminders to pay your club dues, both the National Healey Club of America and as well as the Austin-Healey Club of New England, that when you pay your $10 dues to the Austin-Healey Club of New England, one of the things it provides is the ability to have these Zoom meetings. Zoom doesn't come free, as well as the Austin-Healey tech sessions that Peter generally hosts and I host at times. So, throw your extra $10 in there and, allow us to keep doing these things. I am going to let our two guests, I would say that they are both professionals, and the difference between them being professionals and me is they get paid. And I don't get paid for my Healey Mark contributions, but hint to Reid, I wouldn't mind getting paid.
Background.
So at any rate, let's start with Andy.
Is he sitting in a car?
I know he's got wires all over the place.
Okay, hold on.
Just look at this
Mute
here.
everybody.
It's like a
Looks
plane
like
cockpit.
Rick, just mute everybody.
what are you sitting in?
Did you silence it or something?
Rick, we can't hear you. You're on mute.
Oh,
Not everybody.
Our Reebok, can you go on mute, please? 62 Gmail.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, Arbro Vic at 62. You need to put yours on mute. There you go. Good.
All right, can you hear me now, as I say?
We can.
Perfect. All right. Andy, why don't you start it out and give us a bit of background about yourself, how you got started in the car collector hobby, and then we'll switch over there for a little bit to how what you do with auctions. So just some background.
Great. I'm Andy Reid. If you don't know me, hi guys. Thanks for having us very much. John and I appreciate it. We're a good team. I got involved in the hobby when I was 15 and I bought my first car, which was a collector car in boxes, and I put it back together. It was a 68 Fiat 124 Sport Coupe. Put it together, sold it, bought a Porsche 912, fixed it, learned how to weld. Sold it when I was 16, sold it, bought a Ferrari 330 GT 2+2 in 83 for $6,500, which was the profits from my 912 and my college money. And was kind of well on my way in the hobby at that point. I bought it from a place called Hollywood Sports Cars from a guy named Schick Vandegrift, who is kind of famous, I guess, or is famous now. His son runs the business now. And actually runs SVRA. I've always collected cars. Obviously, for the majority of my life, my daily driver cars have been effectively collector cars. I used all the cars I've ever used until probably the last 15 years as daily drivers. I did a bunch of stuff. I used to work in Hollywood, so I got to buy a bunch of cool cars then, and then I sold those. And I went to work on the internet, which gave me opportunities to buy some bigger cars, sold those. And that's about the time when I was doing internet stuff in the early 2000s, when I started buying cars specifically as collector cars, though I still tend to drive everything. My average miles in a collector car are probably 10 to 20,000 miles a year. And I live in Connecticut, so I have a short season. But that's how when I got out of the internet, I didn't have any job. I sold off an internet company and couldn't get a job because in 2001, if you were a founder of an internet company, nobody wanted to hire you because there weren't any jobs. I'm like, oh, okay. So I decided to go work for car magazines, and I worked for this magazine called Victory Lane and made $25 in a story. In my second month of writing $25 stories for Victory Lane, I ran into Tim Suttard from Classic Motorsports and Graduates Motorsports, who offered me the opportunity. Then we had dinner together at the Gold Cup at VIR, and he offered me a job being his auction columnist because I'd bought and sold a bunch at auction already and kind of knew how it worked. I sold the Ferrari that I bought in high school in college at Barrett-Jackson in 1989 at the top of the market, which was a great time to sell it. And it kind of brought me on my way to other things. But so I started writing this column for Tim, and I started doing auction tours, and I started writing columns for other magazines. I've done some stuff for Haggerty. I worked for Magneto. I've worked for Sports Car Market. I kind of worked everywhere, and now I work for ClassicCars.com. I'm starting to work again for Classic Motorsports again, which is very strange. And I write for a company called Motorius, which is part of Speed Digital, which is effectively part of Haggerty. I also contribute to a magazine in Europe called Tazio. So I've written for a kind of everybody, but Road and Track and Car, except for the big three, but they don't really cover classic cars, so it doesn't matter. And that's my deal. I decided I was going to write about cars because no one would just pay me to take pictures of cars, and so I had no choice. And so I kind of fell into it backwards. And here I am 22 years later of covering auctions and being at brick and mortar auctions and watching online auctions happen and watch how those have changed. Help work for an auction company as well for a while as a marketer, as their chief marketing officer. So I've kind of been on both sides of the whole thing. I've bought, I've sold, I've worked for the auction companies themselves. So that's my deal.
Well, Andy, I see we have two things in common. One is in college, I had two Fiat 124 Spiders, so we got that in common.
Yep.
And I also, doing my show prep, as it were, saw you were a big James Bond fan.
Huge. Yeah. Big collector of stuff. I never had one of the cars, though I had a 007 edition Z3, which was one of 50. And I've got a bunch of Fleming stuff. I've got some Fleming signed books back here somewhere, and James Bond props and all, like from movie props. I had Timothy Dalton's James Bond Submariner for about 3 years before it got to be worth so much money. I sold it because I was going to buy another car. So
I should be wearing my Walther PPK and my shoulder harness, but, you know.
Yeah, that's over here in the gun safe, actually.
What's your favorite movie, Bond movie?
Dr. No or from Russia or from Russia with Love, quite honestly, of the old ones, and of the new ones, probably Skyfall.
Yeah, I'm
The Saratoga Auto Museum is just opening up the Bond in Motion exhibit.
Correct. Yep.
Planning on being there.
Yep.
okay, John, how about, now, John has been a guest before on AHBS, and despite that, we've invited him
We've had
back.
him.
Imagine, go figure.
How about your background, John?
I was just a business guy. I was a sales and marketing rep and executive for a while. I was a general manager. I was in the technology business for the most part. And then I bought I had to like pay attention to life. So I had kind of gotten out of sports cars and Heelys and MGs and stuff. And then in the mid-90s, I bought a BJ7. One thing led to another, and I ended up being friends with Mark Baker, who owns Sport and Specialty. And Mark and I did a lot of crazy stuff together and built some cars. And the background where Donovan's sitting now, that was my car at one time. And Ray or Mark and I, built the car, and I ran it for 15 years or so before I bought my Alpha. And then Mark, it's 11 years now, passed away unexpectedly in his mid-50s. So I had sold the company I operated back in 2006, and I was kind of a bum. I went back to school. I goofed around. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do when I grew up. All I knew was I didn't have enough money to do nothing. Or I couldn't like play with cars and go racing if I didn't get a real job. So instead I bought Mark's shop from his family. This is my 10-year anniversary, December 31st. So I made it 10 whole years, which as some of you know is no mean feat these days. Ask Kenny Beck, it sort of looks easy, but you got to pay attention all the time. But it's been fun. And along the way, it's got to be like 8 years ago. One of the things I did was I sold. If you Google 100R, you end up with seeing Mark Baker's silver 100 Rally. That was his concept car. And that was sold at Bonham's. Jesus, I'm sorry.
It sounds familiar.
Yeah, it's a cool car. It was his idea. If BMC had made,
who makes robotic cars.
Ken Wasson, can you put your screen on mute, please? Ken Wasson?
Yeah, I've just muted him.
John, I'm mute.
John's on mute again.
John, you're on mute. Unmute. You're still muted.
well, don't know how I did that, but that's better. So anyway, I met Ray, Heffron, and some of the other guys out there. We had a good time, and that was my first exposure to the auction world. In fact, that's where I met Andy. That was his first year being an insurance guy. I was his first commercial customer. So I have family in Arizona, so it's a good reason for me to go out there and hang out for a week and attend the auctions. I would tell you that Ray and John and myself have been and Andy have been like students of kind of the auction, the auction biz, and we check out the cars, we do it. It's kind of like a sporting event for us. We'll take a catalog and sit there and spend the afternoon and have a few cocktails and figure out if they're really going to get the kind of money that the estimates are showing, or if they'll even make the reserve. And it's a lot of fun.
And we place bets.
Yeah, so of course, if the minute you say auctions, you ever say Arizona, everybody goes, "Oh, you're going to Barrett Jackson." Yeah, for about 20 minutes, and then we go to Gooding and we go to RM or we go to Bonham. So since COVID, a lot of that has changed. But indeed, it's been fun. So, basically, I've been running Sport and Specialty for 10 years. He's got cats walking in front of his computer. Sorry. But I've been running that for 10 years and gotten to know the community. I've kind of expanded out into the Jaguar community and the Alpha community. Heelys are always fun. I had a great time. Michael Salter and I got to know each other a little bit at the last enclave. I had a lot of fun hanging out with Reid and company. David and I have been to some shows together. So this is a real fun community, if you will, and a great hobby to be in. So, I consider myself very fortunate to have you, invite me to this, Rick, and get to hang out. Pete Sturdivant and I were, trading lies and showing each other cars. We've got, 100, or we got, negative cars. This is a red car with a black cove, and I got a black cove with a red car. But, it's a great organization, and I'm really happy to be here. Thanks a lot, Rick.
No problem. Ray Donovan, can you say hello for a second so we can see the 100R in the background? Not to see you.
It's
I don't want to
it's the
see you,
repeats,
but
right.
I'd like to see the 100R.
No,
No. That's
That's a
what
big
we
night.
got.
That's not a 100R. The 100R, if you Google it, it'll come. It usually find it. It's an interesting car. Baker put a lot of time and effort into it. We sold that car. That car sold at auction probably 8 years ago for about 124.
It's a beautiful car. It was silver, if I'm not mistaken, with a persimmon.
Yeah, Persimmon's interior. Everybody says, "Oh, that's not Persimmon."
Yeah.
This is what it looked like. The original upholstery was on the seats when we got it.
All right, well, moving to our topic of the evening.
There you go.
Because we could sit there and, talk all night, and then if there were any martinis around, we could talk even longer. But anyway, going back to you, John. So how did you get involved in auctioning Austin-Heelys?
In Austin-Heeley's?
Have you ever auctioned at a show?
You gotta ask the question again, Rick. I'm sorry.
Have you ever auctioned an Austin-Heeley?
Yeah, the 100R that was just showing up on the picture that I guess Mike Martin was putting it up. We did the 100R. We did the 100R. That was a BN2. I would tell you, more and more, obviously, I think Ray and John and I have probably watched a half a dozen to a dozen go across the stage, go under the hammer. And we tend to watch them, obviously, because as you said, Rick, we're looking at the values, and that's one of the reasons I go. I don't particularly go to buy or sell cars. If I buy it at an auction, I'm probably doing it wrong. But unless it's really a good good deal, and sometimes you don't know that until later. But I watch them go across. I pretty much know the values. Andy and I prepped for this a little bit this morning, and both of us were within $5,000-$10,000 on some of the history at the auctions that we looked up. That we looked up this morning. You got a pretty good feel for where the values are going to go on these cars. But you can't really tell until you get on site and you actually look at the car. And I think Ray would tell you that too, that if you don't see the car, you really can't tell whether it's going to be a nice car or not a nice car.
How about you, Andy? I know you've auctioned some big time stuff in the past. What are some of the stuff that you've auctioned?
Well, I've sold a Heeley this year, 106 and 104 and a BN2 100 this year for a client. The biggest single car I've sold, one of the biggest was Janis Joplin's Porsche 356. They sold at RM Sotheby's. I brought that to auction for the client. I've sold, I want to say $140 million worth of cars at RM Sotheby's over the years, literally. And including the Gurney Eagle One, a lot of stuff. And at Bonhams, I've sold one of my BMWs, a 30 CS, Porsche 911 Targa 68, a bunch of stuff, about 10 cars at Bonhams, about 200 what is it, 200 cars at RM, I guess. Yeah, 200 cars at RM.
And Joplin's car was a psychedelic 356?
Correct. That we thought would be that the pre-auction, and I brought it to RM for very specific reasons. We thought that and this is back to one of your last questions on your list, is that we thought the pre-auction estimate was $400,000 to $600,000, and I thought it'd do $1 million, and it did 1.76 million.
Now, I'm going to caution you, Andy, don't tell anyone there was a list of questions in advance, because we like to make it look like it's, spontaneous.
That was me. That was me. I did it.
John did it, but yeah, we sold it for 1.76, and that was a hell of a good day for Michael Joplin and the family and everything else too, because they thought it was going to go for 800,000 or $1 million, and I knew it was going to go for more. I just didn't think it was going to go for that much more. How do you decide? How do you make that decision of where to sell a particular car? Should you go to an auction, online, bring a trailer, eBay? Depends on the car. It's a car to car situation. If you've got a 100M that raced in period or had great period ownership history that was immaculately restored to the way it was in period, you can take it to Gooding, you can take it to RM Sotheby's, and do very, very, very well with it. And those are probably the two places to go. Maybe Broad Arrow, but they haven't figured out what they're going to do yet. So they're still sorting out. Broad Arrow is still sorting out what they're going to be, I think, to a certain degree. But that's
Broad Arrow used to be, which house was Broad Arrow before?
Broad Arrow was a lot of the former employees of RM Sotheby's.
Okay.
So, but no, that's where I would go. Is I go to RM Sotheby's or Gooding, and I say that in that order because I've bought a car or two at Good. I bought a car at Gooding this year for a client, an Allard, but I've not sold at Gooding, and I've sold at RM a lot, so I get a lot of. I know what I'm doing with them. I know how they activate. There's a very specific reason that I took the Porsche to RM Sotheby's, the Genesis car, because at the time they had the best public relations person that has ever worked in the auction world working for them. She's since moved on, but I knew what she could do. And that car was on every single channel for 2 weeks before that auction, every single morning television show. RM Sotheby's media arm is really strong.
What kind of thing would you look at for a auction house besides publicity to be doing?
I'd look at publicity. I'd look at their backlog of sales history. I'd look at their reputation within the market space. I'd look at the way I would never take a car to an auction I'd never been to before. If I had not been to one of those companies' sales, I wouldn't want to necessarily go, well, hey, let's try it out over here, because there are good auction houses and there are auction houses that need some work. And you want to know who you're dealing with. To me, it's a customer service piece. I want to know that they're taking care of me. I want to know that I'm being thought of and I'm not just another guy selling a car there. It's a relationships business, just like any other business that's of that type. And so I play where my relationships are. So I would look at the people that treat me right. If people say you've got a run-of-the-mill BT7 and it's just a average driver, which is nothing wrong with an average driver, but if the auction company tells you they're going to get $125,000 for your car, run like hell, because there's no way. If they make promises like this, they're just trying to do anything to get you in the door. And that is not the right place to go. Now, you might really want to think that your BT7 is 100, your number 3 condition driver is worth that. But they can tell you anything they want to. They are car dealers. That's what people don't realize. Any auction house is effectively a short-term car dealership. And those guys are selling cars, and they're selling you to get their cars to sell. So there's a whole double sales process going. First of all, they're selling you on their company, and then they're trying to sell your car. And I also, excuse me, you don't want to sell your car. Say you've got a really nice BJ8. You don't want to sell it at the auction company that's known for their muscle cars, because it's not going to go well.
Yeah, we talked about that earlier today a little bit, but for example, at 100R, the year before, I sent that to back when Russo Steel was up. You know, it's funny, they're still taking cars for Arizona today. If I call Jacob Greason at Bonhams, they take it. Back in those days, by September, if you weren't subscribed with an auction house for January, they wouldn't take your car. So we were kind of late coming to market. Russo Steel took it. And as I recall,
Bonhams took it.
No, Russo Steel took it. This was the year before.
Oh, okay.
And we sent it out, and I had like an $85,000 reserve on it, and it stopped at 85 at Russo Steel. Now this is a car that the next year we took it to Bottoms, and it brought back 124,000. Okay, that's a good example, a perfect example of why you have to kind of choose your audience. You know, everybody that says, oh, where are you going in January? You're going to Arizona. Oh, I'm going to the auctions. Oh, you're going to go to Barrett Jackson. Not really. No. And I guess, within our circle or within what we do, Ray, I mean, what do we spend at Barrett? You spend an afternoon maybe walking around looking at the Ginsu knives and the lounge chairs and
bass fishing trips.
Yeah, right. But if you're really serious about looking at the cars and checking out the value, you're walking at RM, you're checking out the RM previews, you're going to Gooding, you're going to Bonhams. Those are the ones that represent our cars probably the most appropriately.
So question for either of you then. Do certain marks fit better with certain auction houses?
100%.
Okay.
Yeah.
100%. If you're selling
some examples.
If you're selling a Porsche, sell it at Amelia Island at Gooding. Full stop, period. That's where you sell it. If you're selling a top tier European, a British sports car, top tier, 100S, a DB4, a D-type, a C-type, you take it to RM Sotheby's or Gooding. I would err on the side of RM Sotheby's, because I think they do a better job with those cars. They understand them better. And what's important about the auction companies themselves is who works there. The specialists are really, really important, because those are the people. Here's how auctions should work in an ideal world. They print the catalog. I'll get my Arizona catalogs probably in the next week and a half. And by the time those catalogs print, if the auction company is doing their job properly, they have already contacted 3, 4, 5, 6 people on each car that they know are interested in said cars, preloading it for you. The cars should be kind of sold before the auction happens to a certain degree. Now, when the auction happens, that's when the money starts thrown around. But the people what best practices auction houses do is they get the right people in the room, specific right people, not just a group of people. Hey, we're having an auction. Let's invite everybody. No. They've actually reached out individually and contacted people that are interested in in lot C, lot D, lot F, and said, wow, we've got an XKSS at Monterey this year. We know you've got a D-type. I thought you might want, you had mentioned you wanted an XKSS. Well, we've got one for sale. And it's XKSS 17. Would you like that? And that's how they do it. And with British cars, RM Sotheby's has consistently set the highest price records of all British cars at their sales. With XKD 501, with the DBAR1 Aston Martin about 8 years ago, with the DB4 GT Zagato, they have consistently brought the highest prices we've ever seen on British sports cars.
Andy, you had mentioned Mecum as being a muscle car house. Have you, I've noticed recently, I don't know if you have, they seem to be more Heelys that they've been.
Yeah, because they, again, the ones, because there's only so many lots available at an RM Sotheby's or even at a Bonhams.
Mhm.
Mecum is effectively unlimited lots. So when they fill up, they're not going to sell 12 Heelys at any auction. RM Sotheby's, Bonhams, Gooding are not going to sell 12 Heelys together unless it's some big collection of significant Heelys and it's got like a Silverstone and all these kinds of things. Someone's serious heavy duty collection. So taking that out of the mix, they're not going to sell 9 BJ8s because it's going to hurt all of them. And Mecum, though, sells 1,500 cars. They'll take 26 of them. They could care less. It's about another car on the block. It's just what they do. It's a different business model altogether.
Do you have a favorite location, a favorite venue is what, by which I mean Amelia, Monterey, Arizona? Where would you like to see your auctions go to?
In an ideal world, Monterey RM Saturday night at 7:30 p.m.
So how many
Because-
people do you have to fight to get that spot?
Oh, you'll never get that. I mean, you got to have something really significant to get that spot. Something.
Yeah, you see, I would tell you that you see a lot of West Coast cars show up at Arizona and Pebble, and you see a lot of the East Coast cars show up at show up at Amelia, and that's and that's just transportation. That's just raw dollars, and you see a lot of the New England, a lot of the cars from New England and Florida end up at Amelia that time of year, and then Arizona is kind of like nobody. You don't see a lot of cars from New England or from Florida coming out. You see a lot of West Coast cars. You see a lot of cars from the Midwest, coming down to Arizona. I think that has really more to do with it, than because it's only it's 8 to 12 weeks apart. It's 8 weeks apart.
Yeah.
Between Arizona and Amelia, really. So you go from one to the other. I think that has more to do with geography than anything else, Rick. That's my opinion.
With the exception of Monterey.
Have either of you auctioned a drain?
No.
No.
How do you think, do you have any opinions as to how that's going to go?
They're still figuring it out.
Yeah.
There's a whole other conversation there, Rick. In fact, Andy,
Big, long
another
conversation.
podcast not long ago about all the concourse that are going on right now, and there's still you can't just decide, okay, I'm going to put up a tent next to a concourse. I mean, and Audrain is really a good one, but are they all feasible? A lot of these concourse are really just, to my opinion, to a lot of them are just car shows, with fancy tickets.
Yep.
So, you're not gonna see the same thing. I think Bottoms did Audrain last year. I'm not sure if who else did Audrain. Anybody that
Oh, that's it.
okay,
I
so
think they just had one.
and I think they were testing the waters.
Yeah.
I think they were testing the waters. But I don't know if that's going to end up being a destination, over time, right?
Yeah.
How
And
about-
but the difference, Rick, with the others, with all of them though, too, is that the one that you have to kind of be vetted for, you have to be accepted for versus you just show up with you tell them you want to bring your car and they'll say yes, are the Monterey auctions. Bonhams and RM and Gooding and Monterey. You just don't call them up and say, hey, I want to sell at Monterey. You say your car has to be a quality enough car to make the cut. It's the only week of auctions that's the case in the US. The next level up is London or Monaco.
Yeah.
Or Paris. So
if you wanted to sell a car quickly, how would you sell
what's the car?
it? Let's say an Austin-Healey,
What kind of
BJ8, good condition.
Okay, quite honestly, I'd very seriously look at an online auction like an Auto Hunter at ClassicCars.com or Bring a Trailer. Very seriously. The numbers on Bring a Trailer of BJ8s, of Heelys in general, are pretty darn strong. And it's easy. The beautiful thing about, and here's what the offering is, John and I talked about this today too. The difference between an online auction, there are positives and there are less cost restraint things and there are more time constraint things. So the easy thing is you don't have to ship the car because the auction company doesn't ship your car to Monterey. You do. And that costs you a minimum of $2,500. And if you don't sell it, it's coming back for, and it's not even, it's 35 to 4,000 bucks one way these days from East Coast to West Coast. Ask me how I know. So these days it's 4 G's to get it out there. Plus it's hotels, plus it's transport, plus it's prepping the thing for auction. For an online auction, you hire, if you're not a great photographer, you hire a great photographer that they can get all the auction companies have a Rolodex. And if they don't, call me, I've got one. No matter where you live, I've got a photographer near you who's genius. Have professional photographs taken, document the hell out of it, and post it online. And you're ready to go. And so that's the one piece. The other piece is for online auctions to work, you must monitor them for the 7, 8, 10 days they are and answer questions rapidly. You also should disclose everything, because if you don't disclose it, some Nimrod is going to get on there and go, well, I think that the Healey seats should have piping that has a gold thread through them in 1968. And he may be right and he may be wrong. But that guy has posted 26 things about Healey's in the 10 years of Bring a Trailer auctions. And so he is, in his own mind, an expert. He's never owned a Healey. He lives in his mom's basement. And you got to deal with those guys. And so
you've read my comments on Bring a Trailer.
No, yours are good. I've read your comments on Bring a Trailer, but then you know the ones I'm talking about, though.
I do.
So what you have to do is you have to actively monitor that stuff, like all the time, because if you don't, somebody will kill your listing. And some people, I swear to God, I feel like, and it's not just Bring a Trailer, it's all of them. I feel like some of them do it just for fun. You know, the most egregious comments I've ever seen, the worst, most inaccurate, nasty comments I've ever seen. You look at their bidding history, 0 comments, 4,000. You know,
Sometimes I think they do it to drive down the bid too.
Which is just because they're jerks. But I mean, and that's why, as John will say too, that is the labor intensive piece. Now that doesn't go away with a brick and mortar auction, but it is constant, because if there's someone posts something at 4 o'clock in the morning East Coast time, you best be up at 7 o'clock in the morning East Coast time with a reply.
The registration process.
Let's go back to what you were talking about a few seconds ago, and this would actually go back to the auction houses. How much actual preparation, if you're going to send a car to Monterey, to one of the better houses, what do you actually have to do to get that car out there? And what are you going to do to prepare the car and shoot the car and do whatever else you're going to do so you can actually get it out there?
Can you mute Bill, because he's talking over all of us? Bill McN.
There we go.
There you go. Thank you.
Thank you. What do you have to do, John? You cannot just like drag it out there out of your garage and throw it out there.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are of the impression you just say, hey, I'm out. I'm going to sell the car and I'll just send it out to Monterey, or I'll have come, and you're going to get the same result. I think you really have to, if you want to do hands off and just send it somewhere, send it out to Bonhams, or send it out to Meekum. But then you're only going to be as good as they manage the car, quite honestly. I think if a car goes out to one of these places, it behooves you to make sure it's clean and neat, to have somebody professionally detail it there and make sure that it's presenting to the people who are actually going to be bidding on the car, in a clean and neat and really attractive manner. And there's companies that do that too, so you really need to put a shine on the car you know, I met Ray and John and those guys, but I went out there to actually kind of marshal that car through. I met them while we were out, they were looking at the car and I was out hanging around it. I mean, and I answered a lot of questions for a lot of people. And I would tell you, you know, people go out and you know, some are crazy. Some of them have a lawn chair. Some guy and his wife have a lawn chair sitting behind the car. I don't think I'd do that, but you know, but you want to be there and represent the car. There's people that are coming by and seeing the car, and if they're going to be interested in it, they'll ask questions. And you don't have to sit there all day, but you can see when people are kind of focusing on the car and going, "Hey, can I help you? You know, can I show it to you?" Because I love to tell you the auction guys are doing that, but they're not. And so it really is your responsibility. And I would tell you that the same is true on Bring a Trailer. I mean, it used to be, you know, Bring a Trailer would you could just drop a car on there almost. Not anymore. They choose. There's a waiting list for cars to be on Bring a Trailer, and they have recommendations for how many people, for how many pictures they'll accept. They want a minimum. I want to say it's like, what is it?
300
photos of that car. And you know, I have a friend right now, his name's Bill Hall up in Wisconsin, and I've sent 2 or 3 people call me and go, "Hey, I need to sell my car." And I'm like, "Do you know what? Talk to Bill, you know, talk to Bill." Because Bill has put together a small business doing this, and he gets 10%. And I would tell you, he's worth every penny of it, because he marshals that car through that process. It's not a simple process if you want to be successful. And if you want, you know, and I got to tell you, if you don't answer those knuckleheads who are sitting in their mom's basement in their underpants eating cereal in the morning, okay, if you don't answer their questions, they're coming down on you. They're going to say, "Yeah, I don't think this guy's serious about selling this car." And there's a whole,
or what's he
Bring a
hiding?
Trailer, you know, Bring a Trailer group of people. You know, Rick, you kind of know who we're talking about, but you know, they'll take your car down, and you with it. So if you're not willing to sit there and do that, or hire somebody to do it, maybe that's where you want to send the car out to an auction house to have it done for you.
But even then,
there's no cheap and easy. There's no easy way to do this anymore. You know, there really isn't. What was the company you said, the publishing company, Andy, that used to have the magazine?
Hemmings.
Yeah. You know,
Still-
Bring a Trailer's become the new Hemmings. You know, there's been a pretty significant shift in how you sell a car today. You know, and Bring a Trailer is Hemmings. Hemmings used to be the place to go. They're not anymore. You know, it's a different environment today. So
Andy, you've represented cars at auction, am I correct?
yes.
Oh, I was talking to Andy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Didn't you do a Alpha recently?
That was,
That was-
I showed an Alpha. John.
Oh, okay.
But no, here's the other thing that John didn't say that's critically important when you ship your car out there is don't just ship if you're going to a brick and mortar, don't just ship yourself there. Do not put up a cardboard sign. Do not sit behind your car at a lawn chair. Don't do it. It looks terrible. It looks terrible. You're not at a car show. You're at an auction, and it's a different thing. No one wants to see your cardboard signs. Do not bring all your trophies and put them by the car. But what you should do is when you provide them with the stuff that goes with that car, the manuals, the tools, the books, all that stuff. First of all, you should have all that stuff if you don't buy it. Second of all, give them everything. And whatever history you have of your car, write it up and give it to them. Give them every document. They have a documents box and they have a documents library at every major boutique auction, because Healey shouldn't be sold at anything but boutique auctions, if you ask me. And every boutique auction has a document station where they have boxes of stuff, and that's where your trophies go, and that's where all that stuff goes, and all your documentation and all your service records and your restoration history and all that stuff, and your restoration book. And if you and the thing is, when you're not there, because when I sold the last car I sold at auction, which I think was that BMW, John, at Bonham's a couple of years ago, the blue one with the white seats. Yeah. So I sat around there like 11 to 4, and then I blew it off because they're open till like 7. But the specialists knew that there was a box there, and I made sure they knew that anybody had a question, the answer was in the book in the box. And by giving them those answers, it lets them it makes their job easier, and they're also more apt to talk about your car if you document it. And, you know, I also buy those guys coffee in the morning, the specialists. I do all kinds of stuff like that because they take care of you. It's just standard. It's like tipping a guy. It's standard good business. And that's what you do. Who do take it to an auction, to a live auction. That's what I do. That's the one right way to do it. To leave the car there and bugger off and not be around the car all week. It's like putting a for sale sign on your car and leave it on the street corner.
There's people with cars, they send, it's like, they kind of treat it like trading in their car. You know, I'll just send it out there and they never show up. There's very little follow-up. You know, whatever it sells for is what they sell for. And then they're always usually the guys that are bitching that they don't make a lot of money on their auctions. But, you know, it's all participatory to a certain degree. You can't expect a premium price because you went to an auction, you know, as opposed to putting an ad in the classified in the back of the Healey mark. You know, it's a different environment. The
difference is if you have something really, really special,
right?
Like Janice's car. I hung out there for a while, but I mostly hung out with my friends and sat at the bar and ate food and drank because it sold itself. A lot of the cars I've been able to take to auction have been important enough cars that we had all the documentation. We threw it in a box. We were some of the stars of the auction, and it didn't matter because they're gonna and that's where they make their money. They make their money on the $1 million car. So you got a $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 car. They're going to pay attention to you a lot more than if you've got an $80,000 car. So it's just the nature of things because you're a serious piece of their bottom line at the end of the day then. And then they start paying attention.
Now, some of the auction houses restrict the ability to look at the documentation to bidders only. Is that right?
No, absolutely not.
Okay. So any person that happens to be walking through and wants to see more about your car can
Yep. But if you're at an auction and you're thinking about bidding on a car, register bid.
Yeah.
$100.
Yeah.
You get a free pass for your friends. You can get a couple extras. Everybody gets in free. You get a catalog. And you get a room. You get a ability to raise your hand if you see something.
Tell you a funny story. One of my good friends has been a photographer, videographer, all those things, and had covered a number of live auctions, including one at Barrett Jackson, and there was a multi-million-dollar Ferrari on the block. And for some reason, he's behind the camera videoing this, and he put up a hand he was signaling to someone or everyone, and the auctioneer said, "You over there, Mr. Cameraman, you are the high bidder for $300,000 or whatever." And after he had his heart attack, said, no, I was just kidding. I know you weren't a bidder, but you know, gotta be careful where you put your hand up.
Well, no, I've actually bid on. I was in an auction and someone said, "Hey, you want to drive a car across the block?" I said, "Sure, that sounds fun." And the car was dying on the block, and I was bidding on the car in the car with my hand out the window with my bidding number because it was a $30,000 car that was going at the time for $8,500, and I could have flipped it for $30,000 anywhere. I could have sold it to a dealer for that. And I'm like, no. And they go, "Are you bidding?" I'm like, "I am bidding. I'm bidding. I know I'm driving the car, but I'm bidding on this car. It's not my car."
You have to get out of the car to bid.
Yeah, I just raised I was waving out the window. They thought I was waving. I got my bidder number and I went, "Hey, no. This is me raising my hand here." So
let's talk a little bit about auction house fee schedules. How do they operate?
They vary. Some are 10 and 10, some are 12 and 12.
You describe what that means for people who aren't.
Sure. So here's the thing. Often for the longest time, auction companies, the fee schedule was 10% of the hammer price was paid. 10% of that hammer price was a fee paid by the buyer, and 10% of that hammer price was paid by the seller. So it's a 10 and 10 equation. Now, what changed was those margins. Here's what people don't know. It cost a ton of money to put on an auction. I know what it costs these days. I having done this and been in the trenches in an auction company, it costs millions of dollars to put on an auction. Any auction, any boutique auction costs millions of dollars. So, well, that's a lot of money. 10 and 10. No, it's not. The margins are that's a pretty thin margin piece, because think about the expenses behind an auction and what it costs just to house the people that work for your auction company and hotels, and printing the catalogs. You've probably all seen auction catalogs. Those cost between $35 and $80, $90 a piece to print, and they give them to you. And they print thousands of them. And then the media buys in magazines, and it costs $1 million to put up a tent. It costs $1 million to put up a big auction tent, at least. And then there's the AV gear and all this stuff. So the margins are pretty small. So a couple of years ago, everybody pretty much said, okay, up to $150,000, or and some of them it's $250,000, it's 12 and 12. 12% and 12% buyer and seller. And then over X amount of money, over a 150, 250, it's then 10 on the residual. Some say it's 10. If you go over 250, it's just 10. Others, it's up to that 250, it's 12, and then the additional is 10% on the additional money. So that's how they do it. In addition to that, there aren't document fees. So it's not like a dealer, they're going to give you document fees. But then there's shipping and tax. So, and they don't charge you tax if the car is moving out of state. For the car to move out of state, for them to be legal and right about this, it needs to be, before you pay the bill, it needs to be contracted with a shipper, and you need a shipping contract in your hand that says it's leaving. Otherwise, you're paying tax in whatever state that auction is taking place, sales tax, at whatever percentage that state is. So, and when you get home, unless you've worked some angle, and I highly recommend not working these angles because it's going to get really bad soon, you pay your tax when you get home. And here's the thing, don't lie about it, because all they have to do is run that VIN on an internet database. And I don't care if it's on Bring a Trailer, Hemmings, RM Sotheby's, Gooding, it doesn't matter. The VINs are all on the web, and the realized price is sitting right there. And if you say, oh, I bought that 100M for $35,000 and you paid $150 for it, the minute that guy at the DMV runs that VIN, it's going to flag and you're going to get busted. So there's a food for thought on this. Now, there are ways not pay tax. You can go through a Montana LLC and all this stuff. Unless you've got millions of dollars of cars, that Montana LLC thing costs more than it's worth. Don't do it. It's just stupid. And eventually states are going to close that down and tax you. Georgia already is, and California is looking at it. So that little loophole is about to go away.
When you're talking about documentation, what kind of documentation should you have in addition to the, the stuff that this is number 5 or 6 or whatever? What other kind of legal documentation do you need?
To sell or to buy?
Well, take each one in order.
You need a title in your name, unless you're a dealer, and then you can have it in a dealer's name or a business name or an LLC name, but you need to be a signer on the LLC or the business. And you need to provide that document to them. You have to have that. You can't sell a car without a title unless you're in a non-title state, which is like where I live. 20 years, and after 20 years, it's on a registration. And so you need it depends on what state you're in. If you're in Connecticut, or I think Maine or Vermont or a couple other states, there's no titles after 20 years. So you need a title in your name, and you need to sign the documents the auction company gives you, which is as is, where it is, documents and everything else, and that you're contracting them to sell the car for X amount of money. And it behooves you to read carefully about that. Read carefully. You should always read you should, at least the first time, you should always read your sales document, so you know what your fees are and what you're liable for. And you should also, as a bidder, read that bidder document, because the language is very interesting, and it's not illegal. It's just things to know about before you raise your hand as a bidder.
I saw a guy at Meekum in Monterey a few years ago, had a beautiful Jaguar D-type replica up on a trailer, And I went over to talk to him, I complimented his car, and I said, how come you're leaving the auction early? He said, because they looked over my title and one of the digits was wrong. And they told me to put it back in the trailer. They wouldn't auction it.
They can't. It's not legal. And
Yeah.
that's why, again, you don't decide to sell your car or to buy your car. This is what John and I are talking about. This is the biggest thing. I've got a guy I know that's a client of mine who will go to an auction thinking he wants to look at cars, and he always done is read the catalog, and he decides he's going to bid on things without an inspection. And John knows who it is. And don't say anything, John. But you should always prep. If you're looking at a car, if you're looking to sell your car at auction, if you're thinking about selling in Arizona, it's too late. You don't have enough time to properly prepare, but you do for Amelia. So you can prepare for that. And you should be 4 months out. As a buyer or a seller, you should be 4 months out. As a buyer, you can't usually be these days more than about 45 days out, but 45 days gives you enough time to do research on that exact VIN. As a seller, you should be 3 months out, preparing that car for sale, talking to the auction company, finding out what they need, and asking them what they need. They'll tell you what they need to get the maximum amount of money. They want to sell the BT7 for 150 grand. If you can give them the ability to do so, they're going to do it. But chances are it's not going to happen. But in an ideal world, they make more money if you make more money. So.
Okay, so as a buyer, what kind of documentation do you need to have? What do you need to do ahead of time?
You need to get a bank letter, or a American Express, or a serious credit card, like a platinum card or something like that, or a black card, to run for the money. At least the first time you do it. The first time you buy at an auction, they're going to need a bank letter from your bank saying your credit is X amount of money, and you're registered, and here's your limit or whatever else, so they know what that is, which commits you to. Because once it's not. Here's the funny thing about Bring a Trailer, any online auction. I won't nail Bring a Trailer because it's not fair to them. If you don't pay for your auction that you win, you're the winning bidder, or you're the bidder that buys the car, because you're not really winning, you're buying. If you buy the car and are the highest bid at the end of the day at a online auction, there's no penalty for not paying, really. They penalize you like $500 on your credit card or whatever the heck they do, depending on the auction company. But there's really no. Outside of that, they can cancel your account. You can just open another one. It doesn't really matter. There's no real penalty. Now, if you go into RM Sotheby's or Bonhams with your bank letter and your legal document saying, and here's the thing, because online auctions are not auction companies. They are auctioning cars, but they're really not an auctioneer. They're not licensed auctioneers. They're a community site that happens to sell cars. They're not licensed auction companies. Bring a Trailer isn't, at least up through 3 months ago, they weren't a licensed auction company. They're a community site that happens to sell cars. So they don't have to follow the same rules that an auction company does. An auction company, you sign that contract and you don't pay, you're paying. Now you may be able to get out of it, but you're never going to walk through that door again. People have been booted from RM Sotheby's, Bonhams, Gooding for no pay. And they'll never come back. They're not welcome there. And the thing is, people know their names. They walk in the door. They know not even that walk in the door, because you sign your name on that thing. They've got your bank letter. They're going to yank your funds.
I think if you actually look at the contract you sign, or the amount, if you look at the conditions on Bring a Trailer, they actually tell you that your contract is only with Bring a Trailer. You're not making a contract with the seller. As you said, you're not bound legally to pay that money. You could go out and be the high bidder and go out and look at it and say, this is a piece of trash, I'm not going to pay it. And the seller doesn't have much recourse against you.
And that is, they have no recourse. They have zero recourse,
Yeah.
none. And they get nothing from that. Now, at a brick and mortar auction, that doesn't, I can count on one hand the no pays in the last 22 years I know about. The instances of no pays on in a brick and mortar auction.
So
That-
if you're going to an auction as a seller, do you need to do your own research as far as what is my car going for?
You should.
What are other cars selling for? What is the best place to sell it? Who's the best auction house?
Absolutely, John.
Absolutely. Well, without a doubt. And I think, yeah, I mean, once again, it's kind of, it's up to it's your responsibility to make sure that you're choosing where to send that car. And there's no, it is your responsibility. And I don't know. Yeah, without a doubt.
How about as a buyer? What if you're looking for a 100M? What should you be doing in advance before you start plunging into the auction market for 100M?
Join the club if you aren't a member of the club already. Seriously, I tell people this all the time. You're looking at someone's. In fact, I had a guy looking for a 100M about a year ago, and I said, "Join the club." He's like, "Why?" I go, "Because you'll learn things, and because I'll meet someone with a 100M who's got and you ask the people in the club who's got the best 100M, and they'll say, Donovan has got one, or whoever's got one, or Saccameno's got one, or knows one. And you'll get to, first of all, two things will happen. You'll get to know what a good 100M is, because you'll meet this guy, you go to see him, and he'll give you a ride or let you drive his 100M if he's a nice guy. And so you'll have an understanding of what a good car is. That's the first thing. Most people, especially new people in the market, hell, I know people that have been in the sports car world 40 years, like Triumph guys are notorious for this. Most guys that own TRS6s have never driven a good TR6 because there are not very many truly fully sorted TR6s. And Healey 3000s aren't a lot different. There's a lot of mediocre Healey 3000s. And the difference between a mediocre car and a really good car is night and day. They're totally different things. So by joining the club, meeting a guy, learning everything you can about this car, including driving one, you learn, wow, this is what a 100M is supposed to be. So then you start looking, and you look around and you do a search on it, and you find there's one on Bring a Trailer, and you go, oh, wow, that's interesting. And so then you find out, okay, this VIN number 89254 is on BAT, or whatever the number is. And you say, hey, Healey Club guys, what do you know about this one? And chances are, if it's a 100M, somebody especially a 100M, somebody in the club knows whose it is. Well, that's Joe's car. It's a piece of junk. Or that's Steve's car. It's amazing. And so you automatically know what you're doing before you get there. Before you raise.
John, you got any opinion? John,
I'm sorry.
do you have any opinion?
Everybody, I mean, people within the community know a lot of these cars, whether it's a Jag or a Healey. Andy was saying that earlier. I mean, sitting with a couple of cocktails is a really bad place to make up your mind. You want to buy yourself a Healey, and it's happened. And I'm taking a couple of cars, and
a bad place to find a wife too. But anyway.
Well, most of the serious collectors or serious guys, they know those cars. They'll know which serial number is coming up. They'll do the research. They know, they're looking at the catalog 6 weeks before the auction. So, they're not surprised. When a lot of these cars come up, very few people are making a decision at 2:00 on a Tuesday afternoon or a Thursday afternoon at Bonhams, or Thursday night at RM, and go, I think I like a Healey. Now it happens, and people do it. But boy, that's not the right way that's really not the right way to do it. And the people that really kind of use the auctions appropriately kind of know where it's gonna come up and what the value of that car is, and they've researched it. They know how many times it's traded hands within the last 10 years, who owned it last, and talk to other people that have worked on the car. I get calls all the time. Hey, this car, boom, boom, boom. You guys worked on it. What can you tell me? Well, it's a good car. Or, hey, all I did was change the points in it. That's kind of what you get but I'll tell you what, buyer beware if you're going if you're going in them. True story, the ugliest Healy I've ever seen in my life. I don't know who did it, who made it, or whatever. Some guy was telling me how many supercars he owns. A very wealthy guy in Atlanta. And guys, I got to tell you, this car came in. I won't put it on my website because I'm embarrassed that I actually worked on it. I swear to God. And I said, well, I'm asking the guy. I'm thinking this guy's probably he has, at his own admission, millions of dollars, right, of cars. And he had this car. This car came in. And I think I sent a few pictures out. Maybe Ray has seen it or something, but I sent a few pictures out to some people who would appreciate it, right? And I called the guy, and I had to be as delicate as possible because he says, "What should I do?" And my answer back to him was, "Sell it back to Mecum. Don't spend any money with me."
And my answer was, set it on fire and call your insurance company.
It was awful. I'm telling you. And I go, "How did you end up with this car?" He goes, "Well, I was bidding on this car, and this guy outbid me." You know, and this was one of these guys who just wasn't used to getting his butt kicked at anything. So he bid this car up to like $75,000. And I got to tell you guys, it was awful. It was just, well, it had all these like custom things and little doodads and shit.
Oh, that car.
And it came in and we were all laughing. My guys are all going, "What the hell is that?" I go, this guy paid like 70 grand for this car, and it was amazing. But he let himself, you know, he let himself down his own path. He was just like, "I'm going to own this car no matter what."
And it had all this chrome applique all over the place and these crazy weird vents.
Yeah,
it
was absolutely crazy. He had like stainless. Somebody had put stainless steel on the rockers and all this crazy stuff. And you looked at it and you went, "What were you thinking?" He had like three chronographs like glued and screwed to the dashboard.
And the
like
cylinder was that big around. The diameter was like 1.5 inches.
Yeah, it was really crazy. And I'm like, well, he wins. When a guy calls you and sends you a car and says, "What do you think?" and you go, just send it back to Mecum. Send it back to, just get it out of here.
You and Andy both talked about researching ahead of time, and now with the internet days, there were just by putting in a chassis number or a VIN number, you can really find out a lot about the history of where a car is auctioned previously, how much it's been sold for. You can see whether somebody's flipping it after 3 months. You can get a good idea just by searching. The other thing I was going to bring up, what kind of inspection at a auction house can you do of a vehicle?
Is as long as you let them know in advance.
Yeah.
Quite a thorough inspection. In fact, here's
try to make an appointment.
Yeah.
You
can see these before if you know, say you've looked at the catalog online before it gets printed and you go, "Wow, RM Sotheby's has got a really nice X," or Bonham's has got a really nice, Broad Arrow's got a really good 1967 911S, whatever it is. And you go call Broad Arrow or whoever you're calling, go, "Hi, Alan, how goes it? I'm really interested in that 911S. I want to get an inspection done prior to the sale. Is that doable?" Prior to the sale. And Alan's going to say, "Of course we can." He goes, "Let me call the owner." But chances are he's going to say yes, unless he doesn't want to get an inspection done. And then you go, okay. Owner doesn't want me to do an inspection. Okay. Now he might just be Miles Collier or somebody who doesn't have time to mess with that, but he's got guys that can mess with that. Or alternately, it could be a car you want to stay away from. And at an auction itself, you can crawl all around it. You can't do a compression test, but you can get at a boutique auction, not a Barrett Jackson auction or a Mecum auction, but an auction that doesn't sell 5 to 100 to 1,000 cars a day. You can get a test drive at minimum in these cars. Any car they've got, you could be looking at a $15,000 Triumph Spitfire. They're going to take you out in the car, and it behooves you to do so because it's another resource. It's another thing you have in your head. And here's the thing I'm talking about. It's interesting that you mentioned about looking up the VIN on the internet. So I got a client who's still chomping at the bit to buy a 300 SL Gullwing. And they were at an auction. They go, well, there's this really nice 1-of-1 green Gullwing at XYZ auction. And I said, okay, what's the VIN number? And he gives me the VIN number. I go, what do they want for it? It was a post sale. They're offering it to me for 1.4 after the sale. I'm like, okay, give me the VIN. So I run the VIN and I put the VIN into the interweb, and I just didn't even put the model. I just put the VIN number in there, and it goes Mercedes-Benz 1956 300 SL Gullwing, this color green, bring a trailer. I go, oh, cool. Click on bring a trailer. Bring a trailer sold it for 1.2. Oh, let's look at who bought it. Okay, so I look at the buyer. Oh, I know that guy. I also know what kind of cars that guy sells. Huh. He wants to unload it for 1.4. He paid 1.2 for it. So then I made my first phone call. I called my friend, a friend of mine in the Mercedes-Benz 300 community. He goes, oh my God, it was hitting the front and the back. It's got the wrong bumpers. It's got the wrong grill. A bunch of guys did the best they could. A generalist restoration shop did the restoration. And so, but my buyer is still wanting to buy this car. And I'm like, okay. And so he's like, well, this one shop did $40,000 worth of work on it in California. And I go, who's the shop? They said, oh, it's this shop. So I call the shop. I go, hey, calling about this VIN number, blah, blah, blah. He's like, tell me about the car. He goes, it's a really nice $900,000 300 SL. I went, thank you very much. And that's what you can do. And I saved, and the guy's still pissed off that he didn't buy it. I'm like, dude, I saved you a minimum of $500,000. I'm making a bad decision. And you should never pay more than something's worth, unless it's your dad's car and your dad raced Le Mans in '61 and you want his race car back, or some serious direct connection with that exact car, or it's the James Bond DB5 that was used in Goldfinger and Thunderball. Those are or XKD 501, which won Le Mans with Akira Cross in '56. Those are or a DB4 GT Zagato, or a Tour de France that won the Tour de France in '58. Those are the kind of cars you just keep raising your hand if you've got the money and you don't worry about what it costs. Anything else is just, even a 100M, 100S, you pay what it costs. 100M is effectively they made 640 of them, right? But it's still a production car. So you don't get crazy because you're not winning. There's no winning. You're buying. And, I won the auction. You didn't win an auction. You won the opportunity to write a check. You bought something. No one wins an auction. The people that win an auction is the auction company.
So if I went to Monterey or anywhere else, would they let me crawl under the car and look underneath?
100%. I do it all the time. John's got a great picture of me a couple of years ago. That Auburn. So I'm in a 3-piece British suit, and there's a picture of me with my feet hanging out underneath the car, underneath this Auburn, paying attention, crawling underneath of it on the grass on the carpet in the ballroom to see what it looks like underneath.
Let me ask you, because I think I know the answer to this. What is each of your opinion of buying a car sight unseen? Just by what you see on Bring a Trailer or an auction house?
I'll do it.
I've done it. I've done it good. I've done it bad. I've done it well. I've done it poorly. I've gotten really lucky a couple times. I bought a Jensen Interceptor from Rob Sass, and I knew where it was coming from though. So sight unseen is sight unseen. I bought a Volvo 1800 about 12 years ago, 1800S. But even then I had someone lay eyes on it. With the club community the way it is, of different car clubs, there is somebody, wherever that car is, somebody knows our hobby is not as big as people think it is. And it's really, we're all connected to somebody else along the line. And if you just make a couple phone calls, there's a car on Bring a Trailer that's in Seattle. Does anybody know anybody in Seattle that can look at this 106 or whatever the hell it is? And you're going to find somebody who's in the club, and they're going to do it for you. send him $100, send him $200, or he might just do it for you for free. People, I do this all the time. If if it's in the Northeast, people go, "Hey, can you lay eyes on this?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure, I will do that." And there's a lot of people that will do that. There are people that will charge. People. I get paid to do that, and I do it for free and get paid for it, depending on if I'm looking at some little car and it's a half an hour trip or an hour trip, that's fine. If I'm looking at something serious money, the higher the price, that's when the cost comes in, because that's when I really have to start doing homework, because you're effectively doing an appraisal at that point. But if you want me to look at a bug eye, John will do it too. I mean, if there's a bug eye in his neighborhood you're interested in, we're going to look at it because we want you to get a good bug eye.
I get called. I mean, I do PPIs on I don't want to say a lot, but on a somewhat regular basis, and just laying another set of eyes. And I'll ask someone, hey, what's your expectations of this car I'm going to go to see? And that'll tell you a lot about what, when you take a look at it. So it costs $300. Let's call it $300. Okay. If you're trying to buy a $30,000 car or a $60,000 car, it's peanuts. It's absolutely peanuts. And I got to tell you, I'll see things that no one else will see. And so, buying them on, I've had people deliver cars to my shop straight from either a brick and mortar auction or from Bring a Trailer. And more than 50% of the time, I'm horrified.
The world's ugliest Healey.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's a whole other story. But I've had cars come in, and you get underneath them, and it's like, oh my God, if you can't get under the car, don't buy it. Don't buy it. It's not worth the risk, because someone else, if you try to unload it, the first thing they're going to do is say, "Can I look under the car?" And you're going to go, "Well, it's got, I painted over where it said stop, and merge left." I mean, you get under these cars and people have, put floors in that used to be stop signs and, road stuff. And Michael's laughing, but he's seen it. And you're like, what's under there? And you look like when did these floors get wood grain? You're like, Jesus, it's a piece of plywood, glued in there. Or, somebody goes to Moss or Kilmartin and gets a floor and they sheet metal screw it in. And you're like, Jesus, what did you do? And they never clean the welds. They never do it. I mean, you look at that and go, you know what? This tells me that there's so many other things in this car that you don't want to have anything to do with. And, and that's one of the things that I tell people on a regular basis, and this goes back to like all the gray hair sitting on this, on this conference call. I keep hearing, oh, the hobby's dead and cars are going to be gone and we're all going to be dead and nobody's going to want our cars and our widows are going to be selling them for $20. You know what? You're right. The $20 cars are always going to be worth $20. Okay. But if you buy nice cars, I've seen Salter's cars. They're beautiful. I mean, he's seen my stuff. We're proud of what we do. The cars are done properly. Those cars will always be worth money. They will always be at the top of the heap. The problem is all those mid-range cars where it's like, it's kind of an okay car, but it's a great driver. You know what? Drive that car, enjoy the crap out of it. That's what you want to do. Make sure it's maintained. Not everybody can put, Sturdivant time into their cars. I get that, but the cars that are going to be worth money in 5 or 10 years that'll keep the hobby moving. Those are the ones that are done properly. Those are the ones where you take a lot of time and, you look at every nut and bolt twice before you commit to it.
John, can you share the biggest horror story of Healey's you've seen come into your shop after a long
You already did.
What's that? I didn't hear it, Rick.
I was asking you, can you share the biggest horror story of Healey's you've seen come into your shop?
That was an ugly car. I mean, it was like, that was the car you bring out to the worst neighborhood in your city, and you leave the keys in it. You're like, I'm out. Please steal this car. And but I did have a car, and a guy came in, and oh my God, there was somebody restored the car and none of the welds lined up and everything was wrong with his car. And I felt sorry for the guy, and he paid good money. He paid like 45 grand. It was like a BJ7 with a BJ8 nose on it. And somebody had gone in and just did a horrible job. And there was, all the frame rails have been capped, and there was bubblegum welds everywhere and nothing really lined up, and the wheels didn't line up, and he bought it sight unseen, and he was a really nice man. But I'm like, if you buy poorly, I don't change my rates. I got to tell you, once it goes on the lift, what do you want to do with it? And we couldn't get it running. He goes, yeah, it runs really crappy. Well, the six cylinder number 6 was dead. It was dead as a doornail. And you're like, I don't know what to tell you. And he's just like, boy, this is really going to cost me a lot of money. And I said, yeah, it is. So I said, do you really like the car? Because I'll fix it for you, but you got to help me with this. And I tell you, for me, there's no satisfaction in like charging this guy a lot of money to fix his bad purchase. But I got to tell you, he should have had somebody look at it, or he should have done his homework. And not everybody on this conference call either likes Healy's enough where they're, investing time tonight, or they've been under it and worked on them. There are a lot of people out there, they wake up, they're my favorite calls. It's like, hey, my Uncle Bill died and left me this Healy. And boy, I got to tell you, I go, oh, what do you know about Healy's? I had one in high school and I had more fun in that. This is some, 56-year-old guy. And you're like, man, they're not quite what you remember. I got to tell you, you're going to get in this car and it's going to be hot and it's going to be noisy. And your wife is not going to, your wife is not going to love it quite as much as you think. And I have these conversations regularly, and they buy these cars and they don't know what they're looking at. They really don't. And it's not sporting. It's not fun. It's not fun to find it, but I do my best with the people. I wish people would look at the cars even harder. There's I've told, not a Healy car, but a guy sent a Sunbeam Tiger into me. And I got under the car, and it was held together with braze. It was brazed. Michael, they brazed the chassis together. And I'm looking at it, and I'm feeling terrible. And then another guy I know says, "Oh, I'm going to buy that car." And I'm like, I'm kind of like, where's the ethical? Is this ethical or not? And I just told him, I said, "Don't buy that car. Just don't buy it." I felt so terrible, and I felt bad because the guy that brought me the car, I'm thinking this guy's a crook. I mean, I would have big reservations, to even sell the car. And as Andy said, the only people that are making money on this are the people buying and selling the cars.
And Donovan still owes you dinner for saving him from buying that car, right?
He does, absolutely, positively, because he was bound and determined to own a Sunbeam Tiger. He thought this was going to be the coolest thing on the planet. And I'm like, do not buy it. Do not buy it.
Talking about me?
Yeah, we're talking perhaps about you.
No,
That must have been a couple GMTs in, because I don't remember that.
No, you would have. It was a really bad car. That's all I'm going to say. Really bad car. It was. I didn't want to work on it. I refused to do any more work on it. I worked on it for a while and said, he says, well, can you just get it so it kind of goes down the road? I go, no, I'm done. I'm done, because I want to have my name associated with it. Ken Beck would do that, but I wouldn't do it.
Yeah. But here's the thing, though. There are deals at auctions too. Here we're talking about, think of all the negatives you just told you. Why not to take your car to certain auctions?
Well,
it can be great places to look for those cars, though.
True.
Because people that don't know, I just inherited Dad's 100M, and I didn't, we had to pay taxes on the inheritance and all this stuff. And so we had to sell the cars off, and we didn't know where to go. And so we heard about this big auction company called X, whatever they are, right? Because they're on TV. And then cars end up there for those reasons. Like, I talked to a law firm. I was consulting with a law firm breaking up a big estate. And they're like, we're going to go so-and-so to this auction company. I said, okay, what do you have? What are you selling? A bunch of, this and that. And they go, oh no, all these Porsches. I said, oh, no. Bad choice, bad choice and wrong choice. But had they not talked to me, someone would have stolen those cars where they were headed, stolen them. And so those steals are out there because not everybody knows this stuff. And I try to educate everybody about this stuff, but there are enough people that get their hands on these things somehow, that there are deals out there. Buying the right car at the wrong auction is I bought a Aston Martin 1969 DBS 5-speed AC silver birch black at Barrett Jackson for $23,000 on a Sunday morning, because A, it was a Sunday morning car, B, it never should have been at Barrett Jackson, and C, everybody on, so that's why they don't have Sunday morning 9 a.m. auctions there anymore, because everybody's drunk from the day before and the room was empty and it's no reserve. So you can get some great deals sometimes that way, but it behooves you to, you never bid on something unless you know the part out value is double the price of what, no matter what it sells for, you know the way how to get rid of those parts. You never buy a thing you don't look at before. So
How can you get, given all that, how do you explain the popularity of, let's say, Bring a Trailer, that nobody seems to look at the cars?
oh no, they get things looked at.
Oh, yeah.
And look, the good buyers have things looked at. But here's the funny thing. There's an assumption with Bring a Trailer that the audience is your PPI. The people making comments are basically PPIing that car. A lot of those audiences have read all these books, tell you stuff about cars, but they don't tell you what you need to know when you're buying a car. They to a general way they do, but they don't tell you the secret things to look for and how to see those things. They don't tell you about brazed frames. So, but what people have relied on, well, I love the comments that Bring a Trailer because they tell me what a good car and a bad car is. No, they don't. They tell you if things are the right, if the commenter has the right data. They're telling you that trim color is correct, or those bumpers are correct. They're not telling you that underneath the backside of those bumpers are so rusted out that they're as thin as tinfoil, because they haven't seen them. But people have come to the conclusion, or they've made the assumption that the comments on Bring a Trailer are a vetting process. And to a certain degree they are, but they're certainly not. They do not take the place of having an inspection done. BMWs, M cars have gotten very popular in the last 3 or 4 years. My friend Eric Keller, who just passed away last year, but he's founded a company called Enthusiast Auto Group. And EAG in Cincinnati is the best place on the planet to buy or service an M car. When employees leave BMW or retire or end up with a windfall at BMW and want a rare BMW M car, they don't go to BMW. They go to EAG and buy their cars. Literally, he sold like 30 cars from M1s on down to BMW employees, CEOs, all of it. And every car he saw that wasn't his car on Bring a Trailer, people go, I just bought this on BAT and I paid $140,000 for an E30 M3, which is all the money and then some. And it's perfect. Everybody said it needed tens of thousands of dollars of work, despite being vetted by the community. Every one of them. And this is not like 2 or 3 cars. This is like tens of cars, 20s of cars. This is scores of cars. This is 30, 40 cars that he saw that came into his shop just to make sure they were good. And they came out with it. They bought a $60,000 E39 M5, and then they wrote a $20,000 check to EAG to make it drivable. So that's the thing. That's the mythology of Bring a Trailer, is that people think that those comments are telling people it's a good car. I don't, unless you see it and touch it and feel it and hear it, you don't know what it is. You're looking at pictures.
Well, the other thing about the commenters on Bring a Trailer is, as you said, none of them are paid.
No.
And people get concerned about being sued. They're not going to say something about this car is shit, because they don't want the dealer, whether it's likely they will or not, the dealer or the seller, to come after them because they've interfered with their auction.
Oh, I never do that. But so I know there's about 20 different car models that I know a lot about. like really deep dive amount out. And so when I see what I try to do on Bring a Trailer is when I see people going, well, this is a great example. And I look at it and go, restored one of those, not a good example. I won't say it's junk. I'll say, notice there are no seams in the rockers. Notice all the body seams are covered with Bondo. Notice the way that chrome fits on this door piece. Notice those look to be, this is a 67 car with 68 door handles. Why? And so I'll ask those questions that way and point out things I can see as things that shouldn't be right. But I never go, it's a pile of junk. Because there's no reason. That's what the jerks do on that site. There's no reason to make somebody feel bad about their thing. But there is a reason to point out the way things should be. Does it make sense, John?
Yeah, I don't, I hate to say this. One of the things I do is I have to stay off of those things because I get on there and I start reading this stuff and my blood pressure goes up. I get all crazy because I just see this guy sitting there going, back in 1967, I had one of these for about 42 minutes and, it started up and then, all those SU carbs suck and, hey, Lucas is this and that. And I go, listen, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. He's a moron. He's, and so I just stay off of Bring a Trailer unless somebody guides me there. I have people pretty regularly send me links and I'll look at a link, but I wouldn't get out of bed if I woke up in the morning, grabbed a cup of coffee and looked at Bring a Trailer. It would be awful because I'm too fascinated by all the knuckleheads that leave remarks on there. And it's terrible, but that's how it is. And I go, man, these guys are just I can't listen to this anymore. So
yeah, I chime in when people drag me to it too. Yeah.
And I'm fine. People go, hey, what do you think of this car? I go, hey, it looks great. I don't know. Get somebody underneath the car to take a look at it. Or I'll see pictures, and pictures are great. If the pictures are really, really good on Bring a Trailer and they're representing the underside of the car, and you can see where I don't care if a car's been restored. I just want it to be done properly. So, I'm okay with that. But that's what you have to be able to see.
Isn't this a great looking DB4?
There you go.
Yeah, that's what you're getting with the picture. You're getting nothing more than my little DB4 model. Oh, you can look at the engine and everything else. Great.
Can we see the underside?
There's the underside.
There's
nothing tangible about that, though. I mean, that's as tangible as pictures are, as me showing you my little diecast DB4 saying, hey, isn't that a great example? It drives great. I mean, it's the same thing.
Yeah, but people seem to be, like I said, it seems to be an awful lot of people are buying stuff from Bring a Trailer, and that's the extent of what they're doing.
Yep, because it's a great place to sell cars.
It's the new Hemmings, as I said. It's the new Hemmings. I mean, it's a go-to place to go buy a car. But if you don't use it properly, you could get burned. And I have no skin in the game. It doesn't hurt me or help me to say that, but I just see it and I go, okay, I prefer to touch and feel the car and take a look at it myself. That's all.
Yep. It's important. And if you can't do it, have somebody else do it for you. And the thing is, though, and there are people doing that. The people that are buying expensive cars on Bring a Trailer, they know that exact car because they know who owns it, because they run the VIN like we're talking about. And you can, the VIN's on Bring a Trailer, the VIN is there. You can run the damn VIN. And again, if you find a good example of something up there, if it's a good example, the community knows. I don't care if you're buying a Honda CRX SI. If there's a community for that, if it's a good example, if you tell people, wow, this is this thing and it's this, they already know it's there because they know Charlie who's selling it and they know how good his car is or isn't. And so it's an easy process. Just people don't seem to. A lot of people are just buying stuff. It's got really easy. It's a video game for people. People treat it like a video game, and younger collectors especially. And they're buying. They are quite honestly they are buying a lot of junk, but they're buying some good stuff too, because it's not all junk up there, but there is some junk up there that is getting top dollar price.
One of the things that Andy and I got involved in, I don't know, was it last month? We did a podcast, and we were looking at some of these auctions and also some of the concours, but we also kind of divvied it up a little bit. I have too many cars, okay, and some of you guys have too many cars. It's just we don't even know where to put them. But I got a new project. Oh, I'm so excited, and I can't wait to piss more money down a rat hole. I'm doing an Alpha now, and I got a 356 Porsche. I just got to start throwing money at it, and I don't even know where to put the Heelys I have and some of the other stuff I have in my Caterham and my race cars and all this crap. I'm out of my mind. But the kids, what the kids do, and I say the kids, these 30-year-olds, and Andy had mentioned it with like the E30 M3s, they're going and buying these cars on Bring a Trailer, and they're keeping them for 6 months, 9 months. And they live in an apartment somewhere, or they've got a townhouse, and all they're doing is they churn these cars, and God love them. I think
drive the hell out of them, and they enjoy them, and then they get the next one.
I on the way home from the shop today, I had a long conversation about where are the appropriate places to buy some property so I can build a place to keep my cars when I retire. That's what we're all doing. It's crazy, but these kids, they got it figured out. They go on Bring a Trailer, and they're buying cool Mercedes or BMWs or Porsche 911 whatevers, and that's some of the stuff that's going on. They're not, our generation, we keep this stuff until it's full of dust and we don't know what to do with it, right? Not these guys. They're churning and burning it,
and they're also using them. It's an experience for them,
right.
Like driving whatever car it is.
They're not dragging them out on trailers. They're jumping in them and taking them off, and maybe we can learn something from them. I don't know, but it's a different environment. It's a different environment.
Where, talking about that, where do you guys see the British car market, and particularly Heelys, going in the next 5 years?
I think I mentioned it earlier. I think the cars that aren't that aren't done very well, or the cars that were shitty cars 25 years ago are still going to be shitty cars 5 years from now, or 10 years. I don't care how much money you poured into them. They're still going to be, unless you did them properly. But, and like I said, I have no animosity towards anybody that doesn't have a beautiful car. I'm happier watching somebody who's got some, 2+ car, or whatever, they've got a 3+ car or a 4 car that uses it all the time. I'm fine with that. I think that's terrific. But there's too many people out there who think, hey, I got this Heeley and it's worth a lot of dough. It's not. Just because it's a Heeley doesn't mean it's worth a lot of money, because I think that the hobby is going to end up being, and somebody else on this call has had this conversation with me more than a few times. It's going to be the Austin-Healey Triumph MG, Sunbeam Club at some point, where it's going to be British cars that are all part of this. I don't know if we're going to end up with, being able to slice and dice Heelys from the rest of the mix. Although I got to tell you, the Enclave was pretty good. That's pretty good turnout. A lot of people showed up. There's a lot of ballroom dancing, and there was about 5 people there that were under the age of 65. All of them were there.
And
we had a lot of walkers. It was nice. I don't know if that property was the best place to go, because people were having to recharge their scooters, halfway across the property.
and one thing we should do too is that, if you want to, again, I'm with John. Good cars are always going to be worth money. Like our friend Richard Lincoln is out of his mind, and he buys all different kinds of stuff. And he's totally he'd love 100M, right? He would, and he's 33. So that's us, and he's the oddball in that he's buying lots of cars and storing them all. He's the oddball in his age range.
Yeah.
But here's the thing: the last Heeley was built. Jensen Heeley, in fact, the Jensen Heeley or Jensen GT was built in 74, 75, right? We need to not trailer our cars everywhere. We need to use them. They need to be, there's the cat skin. But we need to, they need to be visible. What people don't know and don't see, they can't relate with. We would behoove ourselves to have these things out there and take them to Cars and Coffee. And if you're in the East Coast and there's a race at Lime Rock, park it in the corral at Lime Rock and take it down to the corner to get McDonald's or whatever the hell you're going to do. If it's a nice day, drive the damn car, because then they'll see it. Well, because what's interesting, well, all young people aren't interested in these cars. That's bunk. You know, we're going to, Haggerty saving driving. That's great, but they really don't need to. Driving's fine. But the less visible these cars are and the more they're treated like precious trailer queens, the less people are seeing them and the less people even can identify with them or even know that they exist. You'll see young people in the hobby who are really into cars who've never seen a Healey, but they've seen Ferraris. You know, they've seen Ferrari Daytonas, things like that, but they've never seen a Healey 3000. They just have never seen one because we're not using our cars enough, because they've become these precious keepsakes as opposed to cars. And I think that's a dangerous thing. The beautiful thing, Porsches are very popular because people drive them everywhere. People get into a 1958 356 and drive it to California from Vermont. People won't do that with a Healey. And they'll talk about it and tell their friends about it, and they'll let their friends ride in them. But I know people with very, $50,000 cars. Oh, don't even think about touching that car. I'm always, whenever I've had cars and someone young wants to look, I'm like, I don't care what it could be, $300,000, it could be $30,000, it could be $3,000. You want to get in? Climb in. When I took my Ferrari Daytona to Monterey the first time, I gave guys in the Fiat Club who was sharing a hotel with rides all night, because it's what you do. And by having these cars out, the biggest thing we can do is have these cars visible and out there and let these guys interact with them, even if they're just seeing them or just sitting in them. If you can't hurt a car sitting in it. So, I mean, you can, but it's fixable. That's what John's for.
Andy, I wanted to ask you, you're living in Connecticut now.
Yeah.
How long have you been there?
9 years, John, 10 years.
Where's
How
that?
long?
I've been here 9-10 years.
Oh, yeah.
And you have recently become the curator in the
Maine
Maine.
Classic Car Museum. Yeah.
Tell us about that. We got some members in Maine and we might want to get up there. Tell us a little bit about it.
It's in Arundel, Maine. It's a collection that is about 152 cars. There's about 80 on display at any one time. One of the nicest Nash Healeys on the planet is there, which is cool. It's actually on display right now. And I truly say that not because it's my collection, because it truly is one of the nicest Nash Healeys on the planet. It's a lot of neat cars, everything from early American stuff to, I think our newest car is probably 70 something, 1970 something, but primarily it's a lot of American cars, Woodies, pre-war stuff, early post-war stuff, but there's also like a Aston 2.4. We've got a Healey 100 BN2. We've got a lot of Alfa Romeo 6C 2500 that John and I showed this past year in Amelia. We've got the 16th Ferrari built, which is a 1949 Ferrari 166 Cabriolet, and it's right in Arundel, right near Kennebunk, and it's open Monday through Saturday.
I know there's a question that actually Reid had asked me to ask you, and before he left the meeting, he wants me to ask you this, so I'm under orders from my editor.
Coward.
Address the difference between the bid received and the sum realized. Maybe an example of a BJ8 that makes $80,000, but the cost to restore it was $100,000, and then the shipping commission, etc. The guy that tracks $80,000 bid doesn't mean the seller pulls $80,000 in their pocket, etc.
Oh, you buy the best car you can afford.
So when you get somebody that's going to auction their car off and they see something, they see Barrett Jackson on television and cars are going for $100,000 for a BJ8. What kind of percentage are you really looking at by the time the dust is cleared, even if you've got $100,000 BJ8?
You're taking a 50, John and I talked about this, 15 to 20% hit, you think it's going to cost you?
15, it's 15 by the time.
15, take the hammer price minus 15%.
And that's by the time you ship it and pay taxes and all this other stuff?
Yeah.
Yep.
Well,
To sell it, right? Not to buy it.
To sell it.
Yeah, 15 minus 15. That's from hammer price. Except it's not, because it's more than that, because it's 10% of 10 to 12% of hammer. Plus it's another, hell, what's it cost to go to Arizona, John? $5,000?
well, it depends on how you do it. Me? No, I'm cheap.
I mean, I figure it cost me about $3,000 to go to Arizona.
Depends on the bar bill, doesn't it?
It's got to be $3,000. I'm flying first, but I mean, if I'm flying coach, I could probably go to Arizona for $400, and hotel's going to cost $1,200, $1,500 plus a rental car. It's going to cost. It's got to cost $3,000 to go to Arizona if you rent a car, John, right? And rent a hotel.
You can do it on the cheap. You can stay with Heffron. He doesn't care. He's got.
He's not on the call tonight, is he?
I see Donovan burst out.
Well, I'll ask Heffron. I can stay at his house then. Fine. I'm staying with Murphy this year.
Just show up at his door. He can't say no.
I'll
Bring
be
a
going
bottle of red wine, you're in.
to Troon when this is over.
But no, so it's going to cost.
If you're selling a car, by the time if you have it, if you ship it out, as Andy said, let's just say you succeed in selling it, shipping it out from the East Coast to the Midwest is $1,500 to $2,000 nowadays.
Oh, it's easy $2,000 now.
Yeah, like it or not, because cost of fuel, time, etc. So there's a couple grand right there. Take that off 100. So you're at 98. Let's call 10. Plus your 10 points. Okay, so you're 10 points under that. You're into the 80s.
Plus detailing, $1,000 of detailing.
Right. Well, yeah, $1,000 to detail the car, and just say it's a couple grand to get out there. You buy your tickets right. I know, Andy, you wrote an article one time about how you can do Pebble on the cheap. I mean, if you really wanted to do it cheap, you can. I mean,
Can.
Yeah, I mean, you go out for 3 days for the auction. You do the previews. You hang out for the thing, and you go home. And most people don't. But it's probably 15 points. I mean, I would say, and even if you sell a car on Bring a Trailer, my friend Bill does these now, and he's getting, I want to say he's like at 7%, just to set the car up and monitor it and take the photos and kind of curate the whole deal. So, by the time everything costs money, same old stuff. Never use the word British car and great investment in the same paragraph. Never do that.
And here's the thing, unless you're buying something that's truly remarkable, that's truly the rarefied air.
Sure.
Really, really rare. One of 20, one of 50, one of 600. These aren't good investments. I mean, especially if you're restoring it. I mean, again, I'm about to write a story about this. I'm trying to figure out how to build it and not like piss everybody off. But I've done this. I've had 235 or so collector cars and about 100 collector motorcycles over the years. And I have grossed, when I sold them, with two exceptions, I sold them for more than I paid for them for the cost to buy them. But not always. I had an MGB I put a shit ton of money into and lost, and I sold it not done. I like, make this go away. I don't want to look at this car anymore. It's killing me. And but the one thing you get, as we all know, because we're all on this call, is it's hard to quantify what it is, like what the value of being able to drive a Healey 3000 on a rally is. It's hard to put a number on that. It's hard to put a number on looking in your garage at night and going, holy crap, that's sitting there. That's the hard part to put a number on. So you gotta be in that space where that's part of the deal, because if you're planning on using this as a blue chip investment, unless you're buying XKD 501 or Bentley number 1 or Ferrari 166 Barchetta MM, things like this, and you bought them 5 years ago and are waiting for the market to do what it does, you're going to be, at best, it's a break, especially if, and if you're restoring them, you're restoring them because you love them, you want to make them great and make them continue, because the math doesn't work. These are emotional things. I mean, and if you're restoring it and the math works, it's a bad shop. Unless you're restoring a 300 SL or a serious V12 Ferrari or a big time British car. But if you're restoring a Healey, you buy a number 3 driver Healey, and it's a great car. You drive it around at 3,000 and you paid 40 grand for it, which is probably going rate for a nice driver that you want to own. And you want to do a full nut and bolt on it. It's going to cost $1.50 to do it properly. So the math's not going to ever work for that car. Now, other cars, the more expensive the cars, the more the math works. But, and also to your question about percentages, the more expensive the car, the smaller that percentage is. Because when you sell the car for $750,000, staying at the Ritz-Carlton is not a big deal anymore. And that $5,000 3-day hotel bill, you could care less. And that becomes a smaller percentage of that final as well. You still pay the 10 or whatever. And here's the funny thing. You all should know this. If you have a serious heavy duty car that's worth $1 million and you want to sell it at a brick and mortar auction, as you should, because there's no other, you don't bring that online. There's no reason to. You should not be paying 10%. Sorry, auction companies. That is their dirty little secret. Everybody doesn't pay 10%. If you bring a $3 million car to RM Sotheby's, you are not paying a 10% seller's fee, because your car is getting people in the door. So you're paying a smaller fee. What that fee is negotiable. And those fees on big cars are always negotiable. And if they're not, it's the wrong company.
Hey,
For
Andy
that
and John. Andy and John, I don't know if I'm on.
You are.
Oh, thank you. So just kind of a quick reality check question, 2 of them really. I haven't heard anybody mention this yet, but Rick had mentioned, what should the seller do to prepare for auctioning their car? And to me, and I want your thoughts on this, but doesn't make a lot of sense to have a real expert with no skin in the game take a look at your car and look you in the eye and tell you, look, here's what number your car is. You know, you'd like to think you've got a number 1 or a number 2, but this really isn't. Could you talk to that a little bit?
We do it all the time. Both of us do. And sometimes it's a pleasant surprise, but oftentimes it's a harsh reality check on what that people actually have. That's my experience, John.
Yeah, I'll give you an example. We had a customer whose 100M we managed and kind of took care of for some time, and he passed away. Wonderful guy. And it was a home restoration done in the 80s. It wasn't something that we put out that, you know, we had judged and it was gold. Okay. But it was a 100M, you know, and true story, you know, he had told everybody in the family that this was a very special car. Okay. Very special car. So of course, when he passed away, his son came to me and said, "Hey, I know my dad really liked you. You took good care of him. You know, he said, I like you to tell me what this car is worth." And I went, okay, you know, and it's a 100M and it's a real 100M but it was missing all sorts of stuff. The fasteners were wrong. The stuff was wrong. You know, Pete, you know, and Michael, you guys, you know, all the things that make those cars valuable kind of wasn't there, you know, and make them really valuable. But it was still a good car. And I said, well, the car's worth between like 60 and 120,000 bucks. And once again, it depends on who was in the room on that day and how many, you know, other people were there and how much it was important to them to say that they owned a 100M. Okay. Or they wanted a proper 100M. And really those are the factors that kind of determine that. So I gave them a number and I said, you know, probably 85 to 90. Well, they got 118 for it, I think. 100
Great money
out the door. And it was a younger guy, a real estate developer in Chicago, guy in his late 40s, early 50s. bought it because his dad liked Heelys, and he's kind of buying a small collection for himself. But he left it at my shop for a year. Yeah, I'm like, this guy, all these guys have way more money than me, apparently. But you know, I think you really need to do that. You really have to have somebody take a look at the car. And I think the other thing that you can't do, and this is something, again, we talked about it today, you can't just say, hey, I'm going to put it on the trailer, goodbye. Oof, I'm out of this thing, you know, because you really need to make sure that you're putting your best foot forward, and the car you're sending out there, you know, is properly, number one, represented by being mechanically sound. There's nothing worse than the car, and Ray will tell you, cars that don't start, and they got to push them over. They got to push them up on the stage. You know, automatically you're out 15 grand. Nobody wants to deal with that. So you wonder what else is wrong with the car. So I think having someone look at it, kind of come up with a good value for that, you know, what might be a good value. And I think the other thing is these reserves. All these auction companies do not want reserves anymore. The reserves are dying, and you know, you put these reserves on them, and people start getting spooky. They like, I wonder why he's got a reserve on it. You know, why wouldn't it go for 85 or 90? And nobody wants to. I would tell you the auction companies are trying to talk everybody out of reserves.
And reserves tell you it's a good. What reserves tell you is one of two things. Sometimes they tell you that the owner is out of his mind, but more to the point, they tell you that it's a really good car.
Yep.
And it's worth what they're asking.
Yep.
Because the auction companies don't want to put a reserve. If there's a reserve at a brick and mortar auction, there's a reason, and it's always a good reason.
Yep.
The other thing too is, you're talking about on the seller side, it is equally important, if not more important, equally important on the buyer's side. So I bought a Auburn for a guy a couple years ago, and I went with friends. Our friend Kirk was there, and John was there, and our friend Nick was there. And when I was bidding, and Kirk looked at the car because he knows him more than I do. First of all, when you have two people, when you have a friend with you who's a car guy too, even if he doesn't know that car, chances are, even if John and Andy are looking at cars together, we're going to each notice things that the other one doesn't. Two sets of eyes, and we're knowledgeable, but we're still going to miss some stuff that the other guy go, did you notice that? Oh shit, I didn't notice that. Wow. And that is the power of two sets of eyes. And when you're buying a car, it allows people to help you watch the room, because you know, you can find out who you're bidding against. And I'm very strategic. I'm mercenary about this. Our auction companies don't necessarily like it when I raise my hand, because I'm either going to buy it right or really right, or I'm not going to buy it. And because I know how to work it. I've done it a lot of times, and I know how to push, and I know how to let go, and I know how to shut a bid down without paying the top dollar. And that is because I have friends who would tell me, it's the guy in the third row. It's the guy behind you. What he's wearing a platinum Rolex President. Oh, okay, so he's got serious money. And those are the data points that are really useful when you're trying to buy stuff. You know, it's Harry Yagi who owns a big giant collection, or it's Miles Collier you're bidding against. Okay, I'm out. You know, there are certain people you're just going to cost them more money, because they're going to, and that's what having friends there can tell you. He's like, oh, you know that guy we know, so-and-so, that's got the big collection of British cars in England? You're bidding against that guy. Oh shit. Oh, thanks. I'm out. Because that guy knows what it's worth, maybe more than I do. And he's going to pay what it's worth. And so why would I, again, by checking out too, I earn myself some nice points with that guy. And here's the other thing that the auction companies hate. So if I'm looking at a car to buy and someone else is looking at it, I'll go to who I know. I'll go, hey, Don, are you really looking at this? And he's like, yeah, customer kind of wants it. I said, you looking at anything else? He's like, oh, I'm looking at this too. I said, well, I'm looking at both those too. You take A, I'll take B. And it happens all among people that do this a lot. It happens a lot because we end up not costing each other money because none of us want to pay too much. So that's another thing that really happens, and it's very useful. And by being around this stuff, you get to know those thugs like us, and you can make those deals.
Andy, talk a little bit about chandelier bidding and shill bidding.
Well, it's not shill bidding. People call it that. If you read an auction company on a reserve car, an auction company reserves the right to bid on the car up to its reserve. It's in the contract. It's every one of them's contract. It's part of the deal. If you go to a Bonham's auction, it's very interesting. They will say the bid is with me at 110,000. That means that Bonham's is the bidder at 110,000. It's not at a reserve yet. Bid 125 from row 3. Okay. The bid is with me at 130. It reserves 150, 155. Okay. 155, sir. And that is at boutique auctions. Now, shenanigans happen. Shenanigans is different than shill bidding. You want to know about shenanigans? Look at the Porsche Type 49 that went over at RM a few years back at Monterey that didn't sell for $70 million because there was a big fiasco. But that does happen, and that's why, again, I have people in the room. I'm watching. I'll bid against the phone. I'll bid against the internet. That used to be a little sketchier than it is now. But now that's been much more regulated and much more paid attention to, is that you're bidding against real people. But chandelier bidding happens, and people, the bigger the auction, the more it happens. The more number of cars there, the more chandelier bids you're going to have. If I can't see the room, or I bring my friends with me and we can't see the room, I'm not going to raise my hand. If I can't see it's a phone bidder, an internet bidder, or somebody in row 16 that one of my friends can spot, I'm not raising my hand. And that's why you also never bid first. You let it settle down. You let it go into its flow. You see where it's going, and then it lets you rate, and you also come in with after you've done all your homework and your research, you decide what that car is worth max, including the cost to transport it home, sales tax at home, and the fees you paid to buy the car. And you stay at or under that number, and you don't pay more, unless it's something that the value is very variable because it's that rare a thing. But with a standard production car, you don't go over your number, and you never have to worry about it as long as you're under that number or at that number. So you just watch the bidding happen, and you bid when you need to. And if people are bidding, if you want to buy it, and you're getting tired of watching, and people are just bidding at 5s or 2s, so 170 cars worth $200,000, people going 105, 110, bid $125 and see what happens. Because that'll change things. And everybody that's bidding 5s is gonna bugger off, or they might bid one more 5, and they'll go 130, and you'll go 160. You're still under your 2 number, and then they'll really go away. And then if you have a good auctioneer, and the guy goes 165, they go, sir, no, we're not bidding in 5s today. Like Charlie at Gooding will say, it's not 5s right now, sir. We're bidding in 20. and that guy, he refuses to take the bid. A smart auctioneer will do that. Now that guy might go $180, and then then you say, okay, I'm all in at 200. And you either get the car or you don't. If the guy bids 220, he paid too much. Laugh your way to the bank and buy something else. Do not get emotional about it. You're not winning. There's no win here. I beat that guy. No, you didn't. You just spent money. You just spent a lot of money. And there's no win. You didn't beat that guy. That guy was smarter than you and put his hand down first. And you see people do this all the time. Ego-driven, type A, lack of humility, small self-esteem, dunderheads do this all.
Deep pockets, though.
Deep pockets, but deep pockets, no brains. It's all about, oh, I've got to win. I'm like, no, we're not winning. There's no win here. You're buying. Never forget, you're not winning, you're buying. And people, and also when you bring your friends with you at the auction to help you watch the room, nobody drinks until after you buy the car. Nobody drinks. And you'll have a stack of drink coupons from everybody. Like I don't even drink. I end up with 30 drink coupons at RM, and I just hand them out like freaking Monopoly money. And none of my guys drink because this is serious business. This is a serious thing. And here's the other thing that people won't tell you all the time, and it doesn't always look this way. This is really fun stuff. Buying or selling at auction is terrifying and fun and amazing and exciting all at the same time. And it's unlike at a live auction, it's unlike anything else. The electricity in the room, like when I bid on this car, I was trying to buy a Tucker for a guy, and it was like 900,000. I was trying to get the thing for 1.4, and my friend Mark Lieberman was screwing me around. I said 1.3. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna get it or not. And it's like, and the room goes dead silent, and everybody's chatting. No one's talking anymore, and it's a pretty electric feeling, and it's a really neat thing to do. And it's an electric at 1.3, and it's electric at $16,000 when you're trying to buy an MGB. It's the same thing, and it's unlike anything. People are like, well, online auction is really exciting. No, it's not. It's like playing a video game. And I was on a panel this year about auctions at Pebble, talking about the one thing that brick and mortar offers that online doesn't, is that excitement of putting a room of 150, 250, 350, 500 people in a room, and everybody's kind of paying attention. Just the electricity there is unlike anything else. And it's a fun sport. It can be really fun and very, very stressful.
Let me ask you, do we have any questions from the room?
I had one more.
Go ahead.
Are there any auctions in the Northeast that are worthwhile that you would sell a car at, or is there nothing really developed yet here in this part of the country?
There used to be Greenwich Greenwich Bonhams, but I'm not sure where that lives. That might be Greenwich Broad Arrow this year. Who you don't know what's going to happen there because Haggerty owns Greenwich and Broad Arrow. But that Bonhams auction used to have some great buys too. Some really cool weirdo stuff would show up there. Hershey is probably pretty close, but that's a lot of American stuff. RM Hershey's, if you like American cars of any kind. And again, what's funny is you want to buy a European car cheap, that's a good one, go buy it at RM Hershey, because it's like the only one of 6 that are there, and everybody's looking for a Woody. It's fantastic. But beyond that, there's really we kind of got a hole there. There's Bonhams at Audrain, which is still developing into something. But sadly there really aren't, are there, John?
Yeah, really. No, Ray, you've got to travel out of the community to participate in some.
There's Owl's Head up in Maine, which.
Oh, there's some good deals up there. That's right. That's a good point. Owl's Head, and there's Saratoga as well. Those are 2, and there's some really cool stuff that shows up at those. There's a lot of cool British stuff, as people in the Northeast know, living all over the place. And Owl's Head is able to pull, as well as Saratoga, is able to pull some of this stuff out of the woodwork. And it's like stuff you haven't seen in 30 years or 50 years or ever. And there's sometimes some really good deals there. I wouldn't sell there. I'd probably buy there, though. Those are both buying auctions versus selling auctions.
And there's been a couple. I think Barrett Jackson was at.
They're gone now. Yeah.
All right. Any other questions? Well,
I'm in Sarasota, Florida, and I've enjoyed the discussion. I'm thinking to auction off a car that I have. It's a 1955 Austin-Healey 100 with an M package on it and a hardtop. And it's a nice car. It's like a number 2 car, I guess, or maybe a 3+, something like that. And what should I do with that? Should I put that on BAT, do you think? Or should I try to go to an auction house? Or what's your guys think? What do you think about that?
Well, John and I looked at the 100M numbers today. And again, to talk to John, we'll tell you, tell him your BAT thing again.
Which one?
How involved are you willing to be?
Yeah, it's not just putting it up. I mean, you've got to, commit some time to it.
Yeah, I can do that. I mean, I know the cars pretty well. I have a couple of 100s, and and I know them well, and I can, answer all the questions, and it's a nice car. It's not a Concours car at all, but it's a nice driver. It has air conditioning in it. It's got a nice hard top. It's a fresh restoration, was done on a rotisserie. It's a nice looking car, and I would never buy one just on photographs, but maybe somebody would. I don't know. I'm one of the guys that they call if they want to know if this is a good car or not a good car. I'll go and look at them and, just write it up a little bit, and they'll buy me lunch or gas money or whatever. But anyway, I'm just trying to think what to do with the car, whether I've never auctioned a car. I've always just put it in the back of the Healey magazine or something like that, or just word of mouth that I'm going to sell it. And it's probably about a $50,000 car, somewhere in there, I guess is what it is.
I tell you here, if you want to sell the car, sell it on Bring a Trailer. If you want an adventure, call Bonhams and send them some pictures and see if they'd like to put it at Amelia or RM or see if somebody might want to do something with it, Amelia, in March. You could,
Yeah,
it
thinking.
could be fun for you. I mean, it could be a great drive. It could be quite an adventure. And as Andy said, it's really thrilling to sell them. I got to tell you, when it's moving up and you're thinking, oh, I'll get, maybe 55 for it, and it gets a 65, and somebody else is bidding on the phones, it's damn exciting. And I don't think you can get hurt because you sound very realistic about the money you're going to get from the car. It's not like you're going, as long as I get 95, I'm fine. This will be great. Well, maybe you ought to put it on Bring a Trailer.
But I would do Bottoms for the adventure, like you said. That's a great point, John. And the thing is, when I sold my 3 OCS there, it was like I was in the room, and it started bidding, and it was bidding by 10s and 5s, and then it was like 1s, and they took $501,000 bids for like 10 minutes. And I was so stressed out. I'm like, I just got to get it. Okay. I paid like 25 G's for this car. I spent about $5,000 on it. It was at 45 or something. I'm like, okay, I'm out. I'm just leaving. I went to that. I left. I told my friend Johnny, I said, Johnny, call me and tell me what it sells for. I'm going to the Biltmore and having lunch. I need to get out of here. And he called me in the car and was with Nick, and he goes, 58. I said, oh, he goes, what'd you pay? I go, 25. He's like, yeah, but it is really fun. And it is a really fun adventure because you're not just a spectator, you're part of the deal then. It's being on the inside, and it's a really cool place to play.
I stayed at there's a Holiday, it's not a Holiday Inn, it's a little suites hotel near the Scottsdale Air Park. And I stayed there when I sold the 100R. And I would, because unlike Andy, who's my designated driver, it's good to have a designated driver as a friend. So I would go down to the bar for a couple of cocktails at the end of the night. And man, I'll tell you, there's there's a whole cult of people that do nothing more than buy and sell cars so they can come out to Barrett-Jackson or some of these other Mecum or whatever. And they bring 5 or 6 cars, they send them all out, and that's what they do. It's like poker for them.
Some of our best friends, we made this way.
Yeah, at 2 o'clock in the morning, these guys are taking the bus going back to Barrett-Jackson. I mean, it's absolutely crazy. And I'm looking at them like, you guys are out of your minds, but that's what they do. And I got to tell you, it's exciting, Walt. I mean, they like that stuff. So,
yeah,
I would tell, if nothing else, just give Bonhams a call or give somebody a call, do a little homework on it. And
call Greg Porter at Bonhams. Give it to Greg.
Right. Yeah,
Greg Porter at Bonhams.
Porter, Porter.
Yeah,
he knows the cars. He's really weird. He knows the cars. He's a super nice guy. He's just very odd, but he really knows those cars.
He's kind of like a Bentley specialist, but he's new there, and he'll appreciate the reach out.
He's at RM now. Yeah, he's at RM. Greg's at RM if they'll want it. If not, talk to Jacob Greason at Bonhams.
Yeah.
So Greg Porter's at RM.
Yeah, and Jacob Greason's at Bonhams, and you can tell him Andy, and you can tell him you can tell either one of them we sent you.
Yeah, I'm excited. I was just going to do the BAT maybe, but I've been to an auction before. It is very exciting, and And I like it. It'd be fun. It'd be an adventure, like you say, you know?
Yeah, you can write a story about him. That you quite honestly, Reid Trummel will buy your story. in the magazine.
Yeah, I know Reid. We know each other pretty well. Yeah.
Those are neat stories when you get to be from the inside. Here's what it's like to do this. Those are the most fun things to read.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't have even thought about that unless I was on this this little presentation here. And thanks, Rick, also for moderating this. And Andy and John, I really learned a lot, and I'm grateful for your recommendations. Thanks a lot.
Our pleasure. Our pleasure.
Yeah.
My pleasure.
Any other
If you decide to do that, you know, look us up. You know, look us up through Rick or something, because we'll be there. We're Andy's got this Ferrari that we're going to be showing. It's going to, you know, again, lots of fun. And I think, you know, I'd love to see your car when you're there. We'll do the preview, and, you know, we'll come in and root with you if you decide to do it that way. It'd be fun.
Yeah, we can say great things about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, and we do that. Tell me, this is the other thing is, and when there's a couple knuckleheads walking around a car, you're looking at, they go, oh, this is really great, and blah, blah, blah. Make sure they're not shills like us that are the other kind of shills that are talking up the car that's only okay, because we've done that a couple times. And it works the converse too. You know, some buyers will go, oh, wow, it needs this and this and this and that. And it's interesting. It's like the verbal version of Bring a Trailer negative comments to bring the bid down.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, we'll see. We'll see what
I
happens.
don't know if you do, like I said, if you
Yeah,
do,
good luck.
I don't know if Ray's going to make it this year. Usually we got a whole contingent of people that, you know, come out and hang out. It's a lot of fun. It's a
But
lot
you're
of,
Richard this year, John, with me. So
well, we still get out and we still get to get out and go to the auctions though.
yeah, that's true. And we don't have to do anything to the car this time. We just have to drive it around.
No, that's fine.
Well, looking forward to it. Thanks a lot, fellas.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. See ya. I'll see you at Amelia Island.
We'll be there.
I hope so.
Do we have any other questions?
I'll ask this question, Rick. I've actually been talking to you a little bit about it. I'm thinking about using Bring a Trailer. I'm totally unexperienced at it. My question is getting paid and before you release the car, what is the sequence so you don't make a mistake there?
Oh, couple things. Keep the car insured until it's delivered where it's going. Number one, until it's delivered, because that way you're covered no matter what the hell happens. If the car gets stolen, whatever else, you got coverage. Second of all, until your money is in your bank, don't let the car go.
So it just stays in my driveway till the money's in the bank.
Yes, sir. 100%.
Oh yeah. No.
Never, ever. Because Bring a Trailer doesn't collect the money. You do.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a significant, Andy and I argue about this all the time. There's this fairly significant amount of fallout. They say it's like 12% or something. And I would tell you it's more like 30, 25, 30.
25,
where
30.
Like one out of four deals turn to shit. I mean, you
Really?
get the deal together and
One out of I wouldn't say 1 out of 4, but about 1 out of 6, probably 1 out of 7.
yeah,
But they're more than 12%.
yeah, more than 12. Okay, 1 out of 5. You know, I'll split the difference with you, but you know, same old stuff. You know, some guy's sitting there at night thinking, "Oh, I'm really going to buy this car," and he tells his wife he just spent $80,000 for something, and she says, "No, you're not." Okay, I'm not. Boom. That's all you got to do. All you have to do is decide you're not going to pay. You don't have to take delivery of the car, but again, you've lost the opportunity. There's a whole subculture in people that are buying cars from buying cars on deals that fell through on Bring a Trailer. They know it. You know, hey, is that car still for sale? Or hey, I just had this on Bring a Trailer. It went to 75. Will you give me 70 for it?
And the thing, that happens outside of Bring a Trailer, because Bring a Trailer only talks to the one underbidder down. So be aware, Bring a Trailer, they only go one underbidder down.
Right.
So that's what they do, and they won't give you as a seller the bidder underneath that.
Well, you see a whole lot of that going on at Barrett Jackson. You see a lot of that going on at Meekum. You see a lot of that going. I mean, all the houses,
Bonhams, all of them.
Yeah, they're making deals at the end of the day. it's like Monty Hall out there for those of us who know who Monty Hall is, but
Those are some great deals. I mean,
I mean, it does happen. I mean, deals, the deals up front fall through, or a car doesn't meet its, and it was what Andy said, you know, a car doesn't meet its reserve. You know, Bottoms and RM, they'll continue to sell that car. They're still looking at some of those people. There's a whole gaggle of people that they know of that are sitting at the back of that tent or sitting outside with cash in their checkbooks, willing to pay that car, and they'll put that deal together away from the stage. Okay.
Yes.
But they'll still take their cut, right?
Yeah.
But
But they'll reduce the cut to make the car go away too. That's when all the money gets funny.
Correct. And that's the thing is you're sitting there going, yeah, I thought I was going to walk away with 85 grand because that was my, that was my reserve. Okay. Well, you got to pay $2 grand to send it home and blah, 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 blah. And some guy says, and my wife is still going to have to look at that car. And I still have to look at that car every day. You know, would you take 72 for it or 75 for it?
Or bigger deal, the Ferrari we're showing at Amelia Island this year, this 166, its reserve was 1.8.
Okay.
And it lived in Switzerland, but it left Switzerland.
Yep.
And so there's all the import back to Switzerland shit going on.
Yep.
And then there's shipping to Switzerland via air because you don't put a $1.8 million car on a boat, which is $50,000 plus the duty back to go to Switzerland. We bought it for 1.22. It's still worth 1.8. The guy was like, I just don't want to deal with this.
Yeah, they're just, but that's not uncommon. It's not uncommon to have that happen. But there's no guarantee. You just have to be careful. You got to watch out, how that happens. I wouldn't, until a wire transfer is done, I wouldn't let the car get picked up.
Not at all until it's in your bank. No,
absolutely not.
I'll tell you something else about Bring a Trailer. When you look at, they advertise that they have shipping available on Bring a Trailer, but there's not a Bring a Trailer truck that comes up to your driveway.
No.
It's could be anybody. We had somebody show up with a Dodge pickup with a fifth wheel, and you want to get documentation from them of who's actually picking up the car. That we asked to see the driver's license. It was a woman that was driving the truck. She took out a driver's license. It had a guy's picture on it. And it says, "What's going on?" It says, "Well, I'm undergoing transgender surgery." So,
yeah. The thing too is though, yeah, and when the guy picks up your car, you call your seller and say, "So here, seller, Bob Smith is here from ABC Transport. Is this your guy?" And he goes, "Yes." And there you go.
Yeah.
You got to kind of marshal your way through that whole thing and trust no one. I hate to say it. I mean, it doesn't cost anything to not trust anyone. I know that sounds awful, but you really kind of have to do that. And that's the problem. Rick, you got a good point in there. Is what I have a customer who wants me, give me, these transportation brokers. It's become so expensive. Everybody's out trying to buy the best deal. And you've got half the Ukrainian truck drivers on the United States are hauling cars around, and they're not sleeping. They're up 18, 24 hours. And, there's some of these sketchy guys show up at the shop to pick up cars. And I'm like, holy cow.
And that's why you insure the car until it reaches its destination.
Yeah,
on
you gotta
your
be
insurance.
careful with that stuff.
I'm gonna write that down.
Yeah, it's really important to do that. But also, Bring a Trailer, unlike a brick and mortar auction company where they handle all that stuff.
Yeah, usually transport, or what is it?
Passport Reliable, Schumacher.
Usually at the back of the room on any of these auctions, there's 3 or 4 transportation companies represented. Cars, we know a bunch of the guys. They're there working all weekend long, transporting cars in and transporting cars out. And they're the ones you want to trust to do that. Some of these, I'm noticing a lot of these brokers are pretty sketchy. Passport Reliable, Schumacher,
cars, those are all good transporters.
Yeah.
And that's what you get with the brick and mortar auction company, though, is they make sure that's all sorted out. Who do you want to use for transport? Well, I don't know. Well, here are your options. You know, and they set it all, they help you set it all up. Where bring a trailer, it's all you.
Any other questions? All right, well, Andy and John, I want to thank you very much. It's been a most entertaining evening and informative. I think everyone learned a lot, and it's been great. And I want to thank you both for agreeing to take part.
Thanks for having us.
Always a pleasure.
It was nice meeting all you guys.
Yeah, seeing you guys. Good seeing you guys.
And I'll
Thanks,
see you
guys.
in a month, Donovan, right?
What?
Will I see you in Arizona in January or no?
Yeah, be in Arizona and Amelia.
Okay, cool.
Yep.
Nice. Good.
Awesome.
All right, guys, have a good night.
See you
All right,
guys.
happy holidays to everyone.
Thanks, you too. Happy holidays.
Yeah.
Happy holidays.